This design is wood-based. A recent study by Architecture and Design, published in the Journal of Sustainable Forestry, finds that the world's forests contain more than 400 billion cubic yards of wood, but relatively little of that is turned into wooden building materials. Globally, there is a virtually inexhaustible supply of wood, making it a sustainable building material. Come from WPI in the United States, and some in NCS from Morocco, and AUST from Nigeria. Our diversity is our greatest asset. We utilized our diverse experiences and knowledge to create an innovative house that responds to a specific need. Our team is comprised of students coming from various fields and various backgrounds. We are architects, civil engineers, structural engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, and much more. Working with such a diverse team, we understood that we could not come up with one general nor standard African design. As we aim for ecotourism purposes, it is also not possible to provide one house type that will suit everyone. With this in mind, we designed a modular and flexible house that is applicable to multiple locations and versatile in function. The house is an open space that follows the user's need. It can welcome a couple of 2 or a large group of up to 6 people. The space and furniture has multiple uses, including foldable beds that allow the space's function to transition from day to night. Daily functions such as cooking and bathing will be included in their most essential form to reduce cost, emphasizing our goal of an affordable home. The Oculus house also has a special feature, our sleeping pod. The pod serves the mere function of a bedroom. Our pod can also be moved around the house to suit the user's need, either to face one of the doors to enjoy the landscape, or placed near a sofa for a larger living space.
Not a lot of people get to say I worked at Tesla or I got to meet Elon Musk.
I've done 2 co-ops with the Walt Disney Company. It was amazing. I've always dreamed of working in theme parks, and I was able to learn how everything works behind the scenes. Co-op is an extended internship, so it's typically between 6 to 8 months long, and it's paid, and you're not taking classes at this time.
So the money that I got from my co-op, I used that to help me cover the expenses for my IQP in Denmark.
The co-op is an extension of project-based learning. A co-op gives students real-world experience. It is more open-ended. They can work on bigger projects, less direction, which is important for their growth.
I treat them just like they're an engineer, not as a co-op. And they come to team meetings, they participate in brainstorming sessions, they do anything that an engineer would do.
WPI co-ops and interns perform at ExxonMobil very well. I think the project organization and the project's curriculum that they have at WPI sets their students up for success when they come to ExxonMobil.
They learn a lot in the co-op. They gain experience, they often gain a job.
We hear from employers all the time that they're hiring 80 to 90% of their full-time hires from their co-op pools.
I feel like by doing a co-op, you not only grow skills-wise, but you also grow professionally. And once you return back to classes, you feel more polished and you feel more confident.
There are a lot of opportunities out there, and you want to find one that's a good fit for you. So meeting with the CDC, we can sit down and we can have a conversation about what are you looking for, what's valuable to you, what's important.
Carefully reviewing their degree path is really, really important, and making a 4-year plan.
So you still have full-time student privileges. You don't lose your scholarship. I was able to sit down with my academic advisor and go through my tracking sheet for my schedule and see if you were to do a co-op this time, these are when you would need to take these classes. And we were able to see that I was in fact able to take an entire semester off and still graduate on time.
And we have a lot of students that come back from co-ops that say, I feel like I can do anything now. And I feel like my classes are easier because I've actually been in the workforce.
I do believe in this program. Believe strongly. It fits in the WPI culture. It fits in the plan.
Whether it's going to do a co-op, an internship, a full-time job, we're going to give you all the tools that you need to succeed in that area and really, achieve your dreams.
In their junior year, students embark on the interactive project, what we call the IQP. About 90% of our students do their IQP off campus at locations all around the globe.
I have been working in a community called Machiniwam. We are located in Cape Town, South Africa. Right now, I am standing in one of the community members' shacks. These shacks are amazing, but there's no light. They're all metal, so how is any light gonna get in, ever? We started sketching out some ideas, and I'm still blown away by the fact that a bottle of water, bleach, and just put it in a hole in your roof can allow so much light into a shack that you would be able to replace a 50-watt light bulb with this bottle of water. It's incredible. It's what the community really wanted, and it's a new and innovative way to do it.
Welcome to Venice! This is the measuring stick that's used to measure the water level. These are actually devices that we made ourselves.
The work here was really giving Venice a way to monitor their canals, and Venice's canals are like their roads. It's how they get around, it's how they transport things. IQPs will do that. They give these cities and these countries ways to improve how they're doing things.
Swarm robotics is an emerging field. It has been around for about 15 years now, and technology is only starting to give us the basic building blocks to be able to build many robots and do that in a reliable way, so that we can start to build swarms that are also reliable. Swarm robotics is heavily inspired by swarm intelligence, the intelligence that is displayed by social animals. So social animals are ants, bees, termites. What all of these animals have in common is the fact that they can behave as an individual, but at the same time form a smart superorganism that can act in a very intelligent way. Current robotics is focused on the specification of programs for individual robots. And this is a problem when we want to program for hundreds or even thousands of robots. And that's why I created Buzz. So Buzz is fundamentally a programming language for populations of robots. There are two ways to think about how to control swarms. One is to control groups of robots, and the other one is to control individual robots. The point of Buzz is to allow you to think at both levels, and you as a programmer can decide which level is the most comfortable. One of the biggest challenges that I find the most fascinating is to be able to create a sort of collective of robots that display a level of intelligence that is not available to any individual robot. The benefit would be enormous because, for instance, this would open the road for treatment for cancers, because we could send in the body very simple robots that individually would not be very effective, but because they displayed this level of collective intelligence, they would be able to collectively find the location of cancer and then attack it specifically. We are working on human-swarm interaction, and the idea is to have the users specify goals for the group of robots rather than for individual robots. And the specific example that we're working on is collective transport. We want to have the robots autonomously coordinate to move a large object in a specific location that is dictated by the user. So personally, I'm interested in disaster recovery, and I'm especially interested in creating a sort of ecosystem of robots that can be deployed in a disaster location where there's no infrastructure, so no communication, no way to collect information in an efficient way, and deploy robots in such a way that they can collect this information, they can recruit more robots to save victims if found, and in general they can do tasks that would be too difficult or too expensive or too dangerous for any individual to work. I absolutely love what I do. Working on topics that can have an impact, especially making people's lives better, is probably the main motivation to work on any technology. And it's one of the main reasons why I chose to work on these things rather than others.
What I found different from my high school was that at WPI, everyone is there because they love to learn.
Project opportunities are built into all 4 years of the WPI curriculum.
My name is Marco Villar. I'm from San Diego, California, and I innovate building materials. What I would like to go into is finding alternative methods that make a building less harmful to the environment. I knew that with WPI's project-based curriculum, I'd be able to get that hands-on experience. You get the chance to apply what you learned in a classroom out onto the field.
I'm Bree, and I innovate infant respiratory rate monitors. For biomedical engineering design class, you're presented with a problem. So ours was to create a device that will help prevent sudden infant death syndrome. It's so incredible to have something that I can look at and say, I did that. I created this in 7 weeks.
My name is Chelsea Ross Miller. I'm from Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I innovate regenerative medicine. I've wanted to be a doctor since I was 13. It's one of those few things in my life that hasn't changed. So I didn't want to go to college where it was going to be back to Scantron tests. I wanted to go to a place where I could actually do something with what I was learning. You really have that opportunity all the time to be innovative and to apply your knowledge. And so that's important to me, even getting my biology degree, to be working towards something that's going to be benefiting healthcare in the long run.
My name is John. I'm from New Jersey, and I innovate robotics. Frankly, the whole robotics program itself is innovative. We think of robotics like a 3-legged stool. There's one leg that's the mechanical engineering side, one leg that's the electrical and computer engineering side, and then one leg that's the computer science side. You become really well-rounded, and that's what companies love. I never really thought that I was going to be building robots from day one in my robotics class, but I was.
In their junior year, students embark on the interactive project, what we call the IQP. About 90% of our students do their IQP off campus at locations all around the globe.
I have been working in a community called Machiniwam. We are located in Cape Town, South Africa. Right now, I am standing in one of the community members' shacks. These shacks are amazing, but there's no light. They're all metal, so how is any light gonna get in, ever? We started sketching out some ideas, and I'm still blown away by the fact that a bottle of water, bleach, and just put it in a hole in your roof can allow so much light into a shack that you would be able to replace a 50-watt light bulb with this bottle of water. It's incredible. It's what the community really wanted, and it's a new and innovative way to do it.
Welcome to Venice! This is the measuring stick that's used to measure the water level. These are actually devices that we made ourselves.
Hey everybody, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be, and welcome to day 2 here of the RoboSports Network Spring Conferences presented by WPI. I'm Francis O'Rourke. I'm going to be your host for the day. I'm extremely excited to be here all day giving some great presentations with a lot of great guests. First up, before we get too much further, I'd like to introduce our first presenter today and our first guest. This is Eric Cline. Eric, thank you so much for joining us this today. For you, it's morning. For me, it's afternoon. But tell us all a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Francis. I'm super excited to be here. My name's Eric Cline. I'm a collegiate mentor right now, mentoring team 2412 Robototes, which was also my team in high school. I've been in FIRST for about 6 years now, and I'm super excited, primarily focusing on the non-technical side of teams. So I worked really heavily as a business lead and scouting lead for my years within FIRST, and now I'm studying supply chain management at Boise State. So I'm really excited to be here and talk to you guys a little about selling your team effectively at competitions.
Okay. Wow, that's really cool. Thank you so much. We should talk more about the supply chain stuff. That's something I'm really interested in. So anyway, everybody watching, if you have today, like Eric said, he's going to be presenting about selling your team, specifically to like the judges, not as like a business transaction, right? not like certain Seattle basketball teams. But anyway, we'll not talk about that. But before we get started, I want to say a couple things. First off, if you have questions for Eric, we want you to send them into the chat. If you've got a question, type it with !Q in the chat, then your question. We'll pick it up, save it, and if we like the question, we'll ask Eric live on air toward the end of the broadcast so that we can answer everybody's questions. But most importantly as well, we got to thank some of the people that can make this happen. And I want to say a special word about Worcester Polytechnic Institute, WPI, who is presenting this year's conferences. Worcester Polytechnic Institute is a leader in project-based education and the first university to offer a bachelor's of science, a master's, and a PhD in robotics engineering. If you are interested in robotics and want to learn more about becoming a student, sponsoring a project, or more, just visit wpi.edu. There's lots of great info over there. All right, so with all that said and out of the way, Eric, I'd like to invite you to take it away and go ahead and show us what you've got.
Great. Thanks, Francis, for having me. I'm super excited to be here. Just like I mentioned, I'm here to talk a little bit about selling your team effectively within FRC. Now, I want to start off by saying that this is an entry-level presentation. Sales is something that you can major in and take years and years and years to get good at. So I'm just trying to give your team and you as a salesperson the opportunity to learn some basic stepping stones to start off your sales career within FRC. Most teams don't have a sales team, so establishing that is going to be a good opportunity. Furthermore, if you are doing sales right now or you do talk to teams looking to get selected for the for an alliance, this is going to give you a couple more tips and tricks to move. I want to emphasize that sales is something that you develop on your own, and you make sure that you have your own technique and way of doing it. My way is not the right way, it's just my way. So this will give you guys a good stepping stone to kind of learn the process. So we're just going to go ahead and jump into it.
Hey, Eric, before we get started, Eric, I want to just ask you a question. So I know that you're talking about this a lot in the context of sales, right?
Right.
In the same way that you would describe sort of selling any other sort of product. Can you give us a little bit of insight as to, are those truly things you can equate in this situation? That's a really interesting concept to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've taken a couple of sales courses within my college, and it's the same process when you're selling a legitimate product versus when you're selling a robot, or you're selling your team, or you're selling a business plan that you're making. It's the exact same steps when you're talking to people. People have the same responses when you're trying to convince them that you have the best business plan in existence, or your robot is the right robot for their alliance. You're identifying their needs or their desires, and then you're fulfilling them with your product. And we'll talk about that coming up.
Sweet.
Yeah. So just one caveat before we get going. I just wanted to mention that all the pictures in the slides are of my team, the Robototes, from the past couple years, so you guys don't get thrown off by that. It was just the pictures I had most available. So first off, as every good meeting should, we're going to start with a little bit of an agenda so you guys can see what we're going to be talking about. We'll start off with an introduction so you guys can learn a little bit more about me and my qualification within sales. We'll be defining sales in life as well as within FRC specifically. I've broken it up into three primary categories: judging sales, non-robot sales, and alliance sales. Judging sales being what most of you guys are most familiar with, talking with judges one-on-one, trying to sell your business plan or your robot or what have you. Then we're going to talk about non-robot sales, which is basically anything that has to do with your team, but not about your specific robot's performance at that competition. So if a team comes to talk to you about leadership structure, or how you run your business team, what have you, that's what that's going to be talking about. And then finally, the big bulk of this presentation is going to be focusing on alliance sales. It's going to be getting your team, who's not necessarily ranked first, getting picked by an alliance captain at any point. I have experience working on a team from when I started with the Robototes. We were about 10 people to leaving the team with 60. We've been very mediocre in some years to really quite strong in others, and so I have a strong understanding of where all your guys' teams are and trying to get picked, making sure that we're in the alliance playoffs. So moving on from that, we're going to talk about a typical timeline of an event when you're looking at when you want to be selling your team. That'll include a little bit of scouting processes, but that's not the main focus of this presentation. We'll be talking about making the perfect pitch, which is going to be probably what most of you guys are here for. We're going to break down step by step how are you going to convince another team that your robot is the right robot for their alliance. We're going to talk about the difference between when a team comes up to you in your pit versus when you're going up to a team in their pit. Finally, we're going to end with a conclusion, giving you guys an opportunity to see what the biggest takeaways are of this presentation, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end, like Francis mentioned. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Like I said, my name's Eric Cline. I'm a first-year student at the Boise State Honors College. I'm studying supply chain management. I am a collegiate mentor for the Robototes, doing a little bit of digital work. I haven't fully gotten integrated yet in that process. It is my first year at Boise State, just 1 year removed from high school, so I'm still very closely attached to the first community. As a mentor, I've volunteered during my first season. Unfortunately, I was cut short. And then I'm also working as the president of the First Alumni Club at Boise State campus. During my years in First, at least during FRC, I was the team captain for Team 2412 for the 2018-2019 season, which was one of the greatest honors of my life. I really enjoyed the experience. And prior to that, for the 3 years prior, I worked as the business lead during the majority of the season, as scouting lead during the build season to help manage finances and help run our accounting and process stuff. I also helped develop our first ever scouting software and built it into what it is today, what our scouting team has been able to really drive home today. Now, on 2412, one of my biggest, most proudest roles on the team was working as the main point of contact between other teams and our team, and other judges and our team when trying to sell our team. So I started off as a freshman, hardly even knowing what FRC was about, selling this robot. I've learned so much over the past 4 years, every single event being the main contact between a judge and our robot, and a team and our robot. I've learned a lot of experience. What I want to emphasize going into this is that I'm just a first-year student at Boise State. Sales is something that you learn over years and years and years and years and years, and you're always improving. And so it's not, this presentation isn't the conclusive evidence for how to make the perfect sale. It's just my way of doing it through my experience with FRC. I highly recommend, if you have a mentor in your life that is experienced with sales, it does do it professionally, please talk to them. See if you can get some ideas out of them. Practice your presentation with them and see if you can adapt it to your own style. That's really what's going to be best for you.
Hey, Eric, real quick before we move on, can I just press you on what you're talking about with respect to having you be the person that's the lead point of contact to judges and other teams? Can you, I don't know if you're going to go into that role specifically, but can you just give a quick spiel about kind of what that entails? Because I think there's a lot of teams that really don't have someone that does that. They just kind of, when someone shows up, they're like, talk to that guy, right?
Right, and I will talk about that a little bit later, but that's a great question, Francis. You know, a lot of teams do struggle with ensuring that their team is prepared to talk to judges and other teams when they come around. It's just a fact of FRC that you're going to get judges coming, you're going to get other teams coming. You have to be prepared to have that conversation. Now, my team, we would set up one main contact person to kind of facilitate that talk, and then bring in a couple of experts depending on what the judge was there to talk about. So if it was a mechanical judge, I would make the first contact. We'd bring in maybe our mechanical lead, maybe a drive team member, and then an extra freshman who is exceptionally well suited to talk about that. It was a business lead, myself, another business team member, and another freshman on business team. That's how we would set that up. Some teams like educating their entire team to be able qualified to talk about a judge, to talk to judges and other teams. That's a great strategy. Some teams have a small group. Some teams have one person. There's no right way to do it, but I will be talking a little bit about my experience as the main contact person.
Great.
So first off, we're just going to start by defining sales. What does that mean? What does it look like in life? And so, while the act of actually selling something might not come up all that often within your life, being a salesperson is a constant job, because when you do go to finally make a sale, if you're going to finally sell your robot or you're going to talk to judges, you need to have started thinking about the sales process long before you're making that first contact. And what I mean by that, one of my biggest points here is that you are constantly a representative for your team, and how people view your team is going to heavily affect whether or not you are able to effectively sell your team to other teams. So what does that look like? Well, in FRC, it's really easy to have teams with really positive notions in the PNW or in your community, and really negative notions. And that comes just through, working with other teams, making positive contributions, making negative contributions, sly remarks, anything. Your actions are always representative of your team. I see people on Chief Delphi all the time post something and say, hey, by the way, my opinion's not representative of my team's opinion. That's just not true. Maybe you're not intending it to mean anything, but people will associate that number, that name with the team and the person making the comment. So you do always represent your team. And the important thing to remember is you're not just representing your team, you're representing the rest of the people that are on your team. So you have a responsibility to be a good representative in all climates to ensure that the people on your team are getting a fair viewpoint. An example I like to use for those of you that are in high school right now, when you guys ride the bus to competition, or maybe you do another sport and you're riding the bus to a different meet, and your team's being really loud, the bus driver notices those types of things, and they'll think, these robotics kids, they're so loud and rowdy, and they're going to start having a degraded view about your team. If you're in an event and you hear some scouting members make a bad comment about a robot on the field, it's really easy to take that comment and then tell the rest of your team, and then your team's probably going to tell the team that the comment was about. And now all of a sudden, you've gone from a totally neutral standing to, I don't like that team, they make bad comments about my team. So that's how easy it is to destroy reputation. Now, what I want to get to, though, is people have a perception of sales that it's about lying. It's about trying to trick someone into thinking that they want your product, or bending the truth to make it sound like your product's better than another's. And that's just not true. That's just not what it's about. Sales is about connecting someone with a desire, with a product that fills that need. So that's all it is. If you effectively designed your product, you're able to go out there, find people that want your product, and you're convincing them that your product is the one for them. It's the same thing in FRC. When you're going around, you're trying to find reasons of why your robot is the robot that's going to make this alliance win a blue banner. That's all it is to it. You're not going in there and fudging the numbers. You're not going in there and telling them something that's not true, or emphasizing parts of your robot that won't help them win a blue banner. It's about identifying, hey, this alliance is going to need a defensive bot. We can play defense. Let's go talk to them about that. Or, hey, this team's going to need another high goal shooter. We can do high goal. Let's go talk to them about that. Don't go in and tell them something that they don't care about, because that's not effective. Now, the other thing about sales is that it can make or break the best or worst robots at a competition. In FRC, sometimes you can be the best robot and not rank first. It happens. And if you aren't able to effectively talk to the robots ahead of you, the teams ahead of you, that you're the robot for them, you are the best robot there, you might not get picked by them. And now you're on a weaker alliance, and now your shot of getting a blue banner goes down. You don't want that to happen. The same is flipped for mediocre robots that might struggle in the rankings, but still get picked and still win blue banners. Obviously, everyone's seen it. The serpentine method can lead to some mediocre robots getting blue banners. But those robots have just as right to be there as anybody else, because they've effectively gone around and marketed their robot to make sure that those upper alliances are picking them. So what does that look like? These teams are going around and they're saying, hey, we have this defensive capability. Hey, we have this complementing part of our robot that works well with yours. We think we do well in the alliance selection. Now, you can never guarantee if you're going to get picked. You can never be strategic about only talking to the top 4 seeds so that way you only get picked by them. But I can tell you that those teams that constantly worry about getting picked have a much higher likelihood of winning a blue banner with a top 4 seeded team if they're talking to everybody rather than just hoping and crossing their fingers that you're going to get picked. Now, I've been there at DCMP, PNW DCMP last year. My team was, we came in really hopeful, and we really struggled through the qualification rounds. We were ranked very near last, and we were freaking out because we had this mechanically sound robot. We just weren't performing well in the field. And so we took a step back and said, okay, what are we going to be able to do to impress these teams at such a competitive event? And so we said our defensive ability is still strong, and that's what teams are going to be looking for on the way back up the serpentine draft. So I went around, talked to every single team at that competition, and I told them our defensive ability is second to none of this competition. Our drivers are ready to go. And we were picked up as the first overall defensive bot. When we were picked, at first I was thinking, that's a little early. I would have liked to get picked later so we could have run around. But we ended up only qualifying by 1 ranking point for Worlds. And so you cannot pick and choose who you're going to talk to. You're always trying to go out there and make sure you get picked first and foremost. Now, one final point, I mentioned this earlier. Sales is not something that you're going to pick up by watching this 1 hour and a half presentation on it. It's going to take all 4 of your years. It's going to take a really long time to develop this skill. Even through my 4 years, I remember walking away from my very last pitch to a team. It was 148. I walked up and I talked to them. I walked away thinking, I could have done that better. My intro was sloppy. I could have improved that. And that's what it's really all about, is making sure that you're not looking to make the perfect pitch the first time. Develop your skills. have your own method. And in 30, 40 years down the line, maybe you're just going to start looking at it a little bit more like a really professional salesperson. But right now, you're just trying to start developing your skills. Now, like I said, I've broken up general sales and FRC into 3 main categories. Now, our biggest focus is going to be talking about making sure your alliance gets picked. I'm going to be touching on judging sales and non-robot sales, but if you want more content on judging sales, there's a presentation tomorrow at 2. I highly recommend you check that out. I'm sure they're going to have some great contact. So, judging sales. What's important about it? What are my 2 biggest takeaways when you're talking to judges? Please focus on your strengths. Okay. Here's the thing about FRC: the teams that are winning chairman's or a business plan or other robot awards are not the teams that have the least number of failures. They're the teams that have the most amount of successes. And it's an important distinction, because sometimes people think, we had these failure of events. We screwed up. That's not what it's about. Every good team is going to have their fair share of events that fail. If you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. But it's about talking about the important parts. That's what judges care about, and that's really what the important part of your presentation is. So when you're talking to judges, please focus on what went well, not what went poorly and what you can improve. I see students all the time when they're talking to judges, they panic and they just think of the first thing that comes to mind and they start talking about it. And even if you frame it in a positive light, it's going to leave a sour taste in their mouth. So, for example, if you had a set of fundraisers throughout your season, some of them went really well, some of them went really poorly, a student that isn't prepared might say something like, well, we had this one baking sale during the year, and we didn't raise a whole lot of money, and we didn't have a whole lot of community outreach, but we learned a lot going through, and we're really prepared for the next ones coming up. Now, that's not a horrible answer. You did kind of spin in a positive note, but the problem is that when you start with the negative, that's what's going to get stuck in the judge's mind, and they're going to be subconsciously thinking about, wow, this sucks, and that's not what you want. So instead, you're going to pick the event that's most prominent for you guys. So how I might frame it would be, we had this awesome auction that we set up in the beginning of the year. It was our first time ever running an auction, and not only did we bring in X number of dollars, but it was a great community outreach opportunity, because we were able to really, bring in people to our shop and let them see what FIRST is all about, see the opportunities that our students are getting, and we walked away learning so much. And we had all these other fundraisers throughout the year, and let me tell you, the amount we learned from these is incredible, and we're going to be able to take this knowledge and apply them to our fundraisers next year and make sure our program grows even more. That's how you frame a question like that. You start with the positive. You can touch on other points if you want to. You notice I still talked about the fundraisers, but you end with even better. So don't go from bad to good, go from good to great. That's how I frame it. Moving forward, what you're also going to want to do is pre-identify the most impressive parts of your team / robot. Now, the common mistake that I see people doing, or teams doing, is not preparing their team to talk to judges. You haven't established one person that's going to be in charge of talking to the judge or teams. You haven't established somebody, you haven't established a group of people that's going to talk to the team. And what you end up with is one person who is kind of flustered, be like, oh, okay, I can talk about the robot, and not knowing what points are important to hit, because every robot's going to have its more impressive portions. Every robot's going to have its less impressive portions. So you want to pre-identify those. If your team is capable, if you have the time, I highly recommend sitting down together as a team and going over, here's our two most important things we did on business this year. Here's our most impressive portion about our leadership structure. Here's our 3 most impressive portions about our robots. Have a list of 5 to 8 things that you've identified as the key parts of your team in that season. What that does is, A, your team members can focus on making sure they know all about those 8 things. So rather than having a generalistic idea of everything, they have a really strong knowledge of a few things that they can talk about. And B, you make sure that when you're going into the talk, you're confident in what you're able to talk about. That same concept applies across your whole life. If you're going into an interview, please pre-prepare the most important stories in your life to talk about. Don't just go in there hoping you come up with something on the spot. Identify the most important, impressive parts. Now, what does that look like? When you're talking to a judge and they ask a question that's maybe doesn't exactly incite the correct response you want to give, you can sway the question a little bit. Now, please be careful with this. Don't take a question that has nothing to do with what you want to talk about and turn it, but you can make minor leaps. So an example I would use is if a business judge comes up and wants to talk to you about your imagery standards, but you prepare to talk about your business plan, you really want to talk about that because that's the impressive part of your team that year. Here's how I would frame it. Well, we've worked really hard this year on improving our branding standards. We have these great new t-shirts. We've improved our pit. And in addition to that, we wanted to make sure that not only are our external imagery looking good, we wanted to improve across the board our internal imagery because we want everything to flow together. So we started off with our business plan. And we took a look back at it and we said, okay, this is not representative of what 2412 is about. We want to make sure that this, when we send it to other businesses around the community, it shows what we want them to see. So we took a step back, we restructured it, bringing in these all new branding standards from our t-shirt and pit, and we implemented into it so everything flows very nicely. And now our internal and external documents look great. They run really well. Be flipping through the business plan, show them it, where was I? And now our whole imagery is cohesive. That's how I would frame that. So you talk about the imagery, you answer the question, but you'll notice you didn't need a whole lot of information to be able to talk about the imagery there. All I knew was that we had new shirts and we had a new pit. But I was expert on the business plan. I knew that we developed this new business plan with its great looks, so I was able to connect it over there. So if you have a general idea of what your team did that year, but you're really focused on the plan, you sway it over to the business plan. Now, again, don't take an irrelevant question and focus it on something that's not relevant. If you need to pass the torch to someone who does know what they're talking about, feel free to give your best answer and pass it on. Now, non-robot sales. Like I said before, I'm defining non-robot sales as anything that doesn't have to do with your robot's performance at your specific event. So when teams come up to talk about your leadership structure, your business plan, how you run CAD trainings, how you train your programmers, this is what that means. Now, in the P&W, it's fairly common, especially in DCMP, to see teams coming around to learn from those around you. I highly recommend, if you're not sending around your business squad or team members that don't have a whole lot to do, to learn, you're wasting the competition, or at least a big part of the competition. One of the best parts about competition is being able to learn from the teams around you. Oftentimes they're better than you and they have done something that maybe you want to try out and you can learn from. So you have to be prepared to talk to these teams when they come out. Now, the few key points I would make sure you talk about, besides doing the same things you talk with judges, make sure you give them the idea, but distribute contact information at the end. So once you've talked with them, you've kind of talked about different programs you do. Maybe you've established that you want to work together on CAD training next season. What you want to do is make sure that you have a card to give them. Now, if your team has the capability, I highly recommend making business cards for your leadership, your essential members, the people talking to judges. If you can, your whole team. Not only does it improve morale, but it's a great way to connect with people who talk to you. Now, what you can do is, if you don't have a business plan, just write your number on a notepad and hand them the paper. With doing this, though, what you also want to do is try and get their contact information. If you want, you're going to be able to want to follow up with them. So take out a notepad and ask, "Can I get your contact information so we can follow up and talk about this later after competition?" 9 times out of 10, they'll be willing and they'll be excited to do that. Even if they were just asked to do this by their leadership members, so they had something to do, they're going to be excited now. Hey, look at me! I'm doing something for my team. I'm making connections, and it's going to make them feel really good. Now, once you have that contact information, make sure you are following up with those people. It doesn't matter if the conversation didn't end with an objective. What you want to do is you're going to send an email after the competition, 2-3 days, give people a chance to rest. On that Wednesday, you're going to want to send an email and say, "Hey, blank, it was great to talk to you. I really enjoyed learning about your team's leadership structure. Let me know if you have any more questions. I'm really happy to help, and I'd be excited to work with you guys in the future. Best, Eric Cline." It's that simple. A couple sentences, 30 seconds, send it out. If you left with an objective, follow up with that. "Hey, it's blank. We talked about setting up a CAD training together. Talk more about that opportunity forward. Best, Eric Cline." That's how you really make sure that those connections start flowing. And not only does that help your team, but it's going to help you personally because you're going to be able to connect with other students on other teams and grow your network. So it's great. Now moving on to Alliance Sales, which I'm assuming is what most of you guys are here to learn about. We're going to be talking about what's so important about making sure you're going around talking to teams, telling them about your robot. Why does it make or break robots? And it's really because when you go and talk to a team and you tell them what you can do, you're leaving a lasting impression. And if you can go up and give a good impression, the odds of you getting picked is so much higher. I'm sure any person that's been an Alliance captain on the field, with their tablet trying to figure out who to pick, can confirm that it's so much easier to identify teams when you have good relationships with them. When you can think back, it's like, I like that 24-12 kid. He was really stellar. It's a lot easier to get picked. And the example I always use is if you're an Alliance captain and you've made your first pick and you come up and you're looking at each other's list trying to decide who to pick, if your team number is the first number that jumps into their two heads and they kind of agree, the odds of you getting picked is much higher, even if your stats aren't necessarily the highest on their tablets. So, for example, if you've talked to Team X, who is the 8th seeded Alliance captain, and they pick Team Y, they come together, they shake hands and say, okay, who are we thinking is a defensive bot? Team X, you've talked to, and you said, and they're like, hey, how about 24-12? Team Y, you have not talked to. And they say, no, their stats aren't as high on ours. Let's look at somebody else that does have stats. Team X is going to be like, okay, fine, sure. But if you talk to both teams, and Team X says, how about 24-12? And he says, oh yeah, I talked to him. They had a good presentation. Boom. You've connected. You're moving on. The stats on the page don't matter. At least don't matter nearly as much. And that's what is really important about sales.
And to just sort of say something here, as one of the people that has been doing scouting for a long time, having a common reference point that you can talk to, even just like a mental picture of what the team is or what some person on the team, that you connected with them, is a huge benefit to me. Just basic human psychology, right? If you're just a number on a page to me, you're just a number. But if I can associate with a person or something else, it instantly jumps you up sort of subconsciously in my mind,
Absolutely. That's a great point, Francis. Especially at scouting meetings Saturday night when it's really late and you're looking at a list of their data, it starts meaning a whole lot less if you don't have any relationship with that team. But if you know 24-12, you know that team, and you know they're good people, and they build consistent robots year after year, you're going to look better. Something I want to touch on that sometimes people get a bad idea about is I've seen a lot of people who have bad perceptions about their own team. When you're on a team, you're much more aware of your performance year after year and where you ranked and whether or not you did poorly. The thing you should keep in mind, though, with the vast majority of teams, unless you're talking about a top-tier team, most people out there cannot think of a team and identify specifically where they ranked year after year, when's the last time they made Worlds. And so what's much more important about the vibe that somebody gets about your team is how you make them feel. If you go out year after year and you're really spirited and you talk to them, and every year they're really impressed by you, and you build consistently strong robots, even if they're not ranking well, even if you're not winning events, you're going to leave them thinking this is a good team, regardless of if you made Worlds or not. I promise you that's how it works. So now we're going to talk a little bit about a typical district event timeline. How should you set up your sales district event? Now, I'm not going to talk about regional. I've never competed at a regional, but this is very easily expandable to any other size of competition. So first off, Friday load-in day. Most teams are going to be starting their pit scouting Friday. I'm sure most of you guys are aware of that. Pit scouting usually starts on Friday. Now, personally, I am not a big fan of having your scouts go out on Friday. I think that because inspections are happening and people are trying to set up a pit and everyone's nervous because it's the day for competition, they're trying to get their robot ready to go, it's not an optimal time to try and get accurate data. Not only are the kids you're talking to going to be flustered and maybe not totally prepared to answer your questions, but you're going to be in the way. So I would highly recommend waiting until Saturday morning to start your scouting. If that's not how your team operates, that's totally fine. It's up to you. Now, Saturday morning is when your scouting should start. I recommend getting that done within a couple hours, definitely before lunch. If you have scheduled matches early on, make sure you're talking to those teams first so you can get your pre-match data down and you can talk with your drive team about, hey, here's what the team's capabilities are. But make sure you're doing that in just a couple hours. If your team's smaller, that can fluctuate a little bit, but that should really be getting done in the very early parts of Saturday morning so you have your data for the rest of your day. Once that's over, feel free to send those scouts to go do other jobs around competition. You can go ahead and send your non-robot scouts out to go talk to other teams. This is a much longer process. The conversations are going to be longer, and you probably have a smaller group of students working on this specific goal. So once you're approaching closer to the end of the day, try and cut it off before the last 2 hours of the day. Again, tensions start to get high by the end of Saturday, and you don't want to be bothering kids with non-robot talk when they're trying to get their robot ready to go for play the next day. However, now that it's approaching the end of Saturday, now is the time to start preliminary team talks. Now what that means is talking with maybe the top 8 to 12 teams, or maybe you have a list of teams that you know you really want to get picked by. Now is the time to start talking with them. This can be very casual. This can be just going around and making sure that your team number is in their head. The reason why is because approaching day end, after the day ends, most teams are going to their scouting meeting and they're establishing their pick list. And so if you have a couple of teams on your mind that you know you really want to be on their list, you need to go start talking to them Saturday evening to make sure that you're in their head before they go to the scouting meeting. Now, when you're doing this, I promise this part is much more relaxed than what's going to come Sunday. Go around, have a 1 minute conversation with them, make sure that they're in your head. You can use the same format that we're going to talk about in a little bit, and just get your team's number in their head. If you only have time to talk to a couple teams, that's okay. The only time this is going to change to a more environment is if you're ranked really low and you're going to need to get picked by somebody, or you're ranked really high and you're trying to get picked by the 3 to 4 seeded old captains. That's when you can start ultra specifying who you're talking to and get this conversation flowing, open up doors. Now, the scouting meeting, the ever important scouting meeting. At least with all the teams I'm familiar with, I have yet to meet a team that doesn't converge after and talk about their pick list. It's either digitally, that's either with a small group, that's in person. However teams run it, they always have some their scouting data, their automated generated pick lists, and inputting their human biases. What that means is when you go in, you say, okay, for our first pick, what we have up first, Team X. Okay, yeah, they've been performing strong on the charts, but I've seen some worrisome technical difficulties. So when I talked to them, they seemed like they were really their swerve drive. I think we should move them down a couple spots. That's where that starts coming into play. What else starts coming into play is the connections you've built with them. When you're looking at a list of 40 plus teams, it's really hard to differentiate. But if you made a connection, you're going down a list and you're thinking, okay, Team Y, yeah, they're struggling a little bit, but I talked to them, and the salesperson I talked to was really confident in their ability coming on Sunday. I think we should move them up a couple. That's where that bias starts coming into. Especially with second picks, defensive bots. Once you start getting back up the serpentine line, and you're running out of robots to pick from, they all start blending together very quickly. Their abilities start being hard to distinguish. A scouting sheet cannot determine the difference between one defensive bot to another most of the time. So the connections you've made is going to heavily impact if you're getting picked on the way up the serpentine line for a bot. Now, the other thing that should be happening during the scouting meeting is your scouting meeting should be happening. And I won't talk too much about how you should run your scouting meeting because it works differently for every team. But the one thing you should do, your scouting lead should be doing for your sales lead or whoever's doing talks the next day, is ensure that the scouting lead knows who they're talking to. So you want to establish a list of about 6 teams that you know are going to compare really well with your robot, and you really want to make sure that you're going to try and get picked by them. So have that list ready to go. Those are going to be your top priority to talk to moving in on. The other thing you should do is identify what your robot's going to be during the playoffs. By the end of Saturday, you know-ish where you're going to be ranking. You know how your robot's performing. You know how you look at stat sheets. You're going to be able to look at it and say, okay, are we going to be 2019, for example? Are we going to be a cargo-only bot? Are we going to be focusing on everything? Are we ranked low? Are we going to be moving to defense? How important is our HAB climb coming in? Stuff like that. The reason you want to do that is your salesperson needs to know what they're pitching to the alliance captains. And then the drivers need to know what they're focusing on Sunday to impress the other teams. And we'll touch on that more later. Now, Sunday starts, it's go time. You as a salesperson, your sales team needs to start talking to everybody. And you guys, sometimes people don't believe me, but I seriously believe that talking to every team in the competition is crucial, because you never know who's going to get picked up as a first seed and have influence over if you get picked or not. You don't want to be just talking to the top 8 seeds, because if they don't agree with their first seeded their first pick, then it's going to be a lot harder for you to get picked. So start off with that list of 6 teams that you identified at the scouting meeting last night. Talk to those teams first. You can put in the most time with them, make sure that they are comfortable with you, talk to them early on, give them a little bit more time. Then you're going to go down the list of 12 to 16 teams, top ranked teams at your event. So skipping obviously any teams you've already established a connection with. So once you've done those 16 teams, it's now just go in any order you feel like of the remaining however many teams there are at your event. What this does is, A, makes sure that you have plenty of time to talk with the teams that are most important for you to talk to, but B, it makes sure that you might get a little fatigued by the end of the day, and so you want to make sure that you're giving your best pitch as early on as possible. And then when you don't talk to the other teams, you can put in a little bit less time. Just make sure they know your name's there. You can refocus. Now, by the time alliance selection comes around, you should be talking to them all the way up until right before they go out on the field. Alliance selection comes around, your job is done. Let's see if you get picked or not. If you go through all these steps and you do everything I talked about today, the odds of you getting picked is going to go up significantly. The thing about sales and FRC is that most teams do not, or at least do not effectively, go around and talk to the other teams at the event. So when you go around and make sales, even if you're a rookie, even if you make mistakes while doing it, the level of impression that they're going to get from your sale is so high because you're the only one that's talked to them. You're the only one. And so the impact is much greater. Now, the only thing I left off this timeline on purpose, during Sunday, when you're talking to teams and you're identifying their needs and you're making connections and you're talking with them, you need to be taking away from each conversation what that alliance is looking for in an alliance partner. If you're seeing a lot of, we need a defensive bot coming up, at least for where you're ranked, we need a defensive bot. You need to go back to your drive team. You need to let them know, and you guys need to establish a match during Sunday, which best suits, which is most opportune for you to practice that one skill or perform that one skill on the field. So if it's defense, you're going to say, okay, match 67, we're playing defense during this match. We'll talk to our alliance partners, make sure they're cool with it, but that's where we're going to fit best during that match, and that's where we can kind of show off our defense ability. Then what you can do is you can go back out to those alliances or captains you've talked to and say, hey, we're going to be playing defense during match X. Make sure to watch it. The reason why that's so important is because once Sunday comes around, the scouting meetings already happened. And I have never met a team who has the capability to reconverge on Sunday and remake their entire pick list. It might be changing slightly based off of new data coming in, but for the most part, those pick lists are pretty set. So if you want to have any chance of the scouting league going in and manually moving your team around, you need to make a strong impression on them. And that doesn't mean picking a match in your head, doing really well on defense, and then hoping they see it. That means making sure they're going to go see it and they're ready to watch it. Because even if you go out there and you perform stellar defense, if that team wasn't waiting to go see it, it's just going to get jotted down on their data sheet. It's going to get sent to the scouting lead, and they're probably not going to, because it's Sunday performance. But if you go ahead.
Well, I have to say, just really quick to sort of talk about, to put that into perspective, right? As a person who's been the scouting lead a lot of times, if a team maybe isn't on the pick list at all, a lot, at least when I do it, a lot of times we kind of save our energy and decide to not look at them, right? So if you're in one of those sort of situations where maybe you're like you said, either a defensive robot or something like that, what you said is extremely important. You have to tell them to look at you, because they very well may have already put you in a position where you're not going to get looked at unless they know you're there. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. That's a great point, Francis. If you had technical struggle Saturday and they just list, do not pick list, you need to establish, hey, we're working now. Please watch us. And 9 times out of 10, they will. I mean, these scouts are sitting in the stands anyway, so they're willing to check you out. I mean, they're willing to that maybe flew under the radar.
Right. So. I mean, as a scout, your job is to make the best decisions for your team. And if that means watching one robot when you otherwise wouldn't have, that's fine if you think it actually is going to help your team out.
Absolutely. Sometimes kids get discouraged if their robot's not performing as well as it should be. But the important thing to remember through the competition is that even up until the last match on Sunday, you still have an ability to make an impression on the scouts out there. You still have an ability to do a good job going into a line selection. So there are still opportunities. Make sure you're not giving up. Make sure you're identifying matches that you can improve. So now it's time for really the meat of the presentation. I'm sure most of you guys, the team talk. You're ready to go. You've done everything. You've got your timeline out. How are you actually executing the pitch? So what's going to happen is I got three chunks of points to hit. It's going to be a start, middle, end. Really easy. Each one's just going to have a couple of points. If you're not taking notes at this point, I highly recommend pull out a notepad, jot these down, and practice them, and make it into your own. This is just a framework for you guys to follow. So the start of your pitch, and this is going to be pretty generalistic. It can be adapted, but let's assume it's Sunday. You're just talking to a top 18. How you're looking to get picked by them. The start of your pitch, you gotta open strong. All too often, I see kids that are going around trying to figure out, trying to talk to teams about getting picked, and they go up kind of timid. They're standing on the opposite side of the aisles, kind of like awkwardly looking at the pit, like trying to find an opportunity or trying to look for someone that's going to acknowledge them first. Please don't do that. That starts off the pitch so poorly, and you might not even get an opportunity to talk to them. I mean, I've been there. I promise you. First sophomore through junior year even, I would go up to pits and I would like look around and wait for someone to acknowledge me. And if they didn't, I would just awkwardly walk away and come back later. That's not how you want to do your pitch. You want to go in there really strong and find somebody who's available to talk. Now, do not go to a pit and try and talk to them if they're in a panic trying to fix their robot. That's just rude, A, and B, you're not going to get someone who has the time to talk to you. And B, don't go there if the robot's not there. That's a little bit less hard and fast. If they're just sitting on the practice field and you don't have an opportunity to talk to any of them when the robot's there, it's okay to fudge that rule. But in general, you want to be there when their robot's there, because then you can refer to it, look at it, point at things. And secondly, the drive team's probably there if the robot's there, and those are the people that you're going to be better talking to. Now, the other thing with opening strong is if you are going up and timid and looking at a team, this is FRC. You're not all too often going to get a student who has the confidence to walk out from their pit to someone who's just awkwardly standing there and bring them in. And even if they do, that's not a great way to start your pitch. You just need to go in and start with a handshake, introduce yourself, ask for their name. Hey, it's great to meet you. I'm Eric Cline. What's your name? I'm here to talk to you a little bit about line selection coming up. Now, hopefully handshakes do make a return next season. I'm a big believer that handshakes do really make a good first impression. If we're still in this world, of course we can adapt at that point. Now, once you've gone in and you've started an interaction with somebody, do not immediately go to asking, where's your scouting lead, or who are you? Just go in there, introduce yourself, ask them what their name is, and you can start your presentation. What I like to start with is what I call rapport, and that's a real word. It's about making connections with people, usually very quickly. So what I see all too often is people will go and say, hey, I'm here to talk about scouting or line selection. Our robot is great. You should pick us. That's not how you want to start the conversation. With any conversation in life, if you have something to ask of someone, or you're trying to make a sales pitch, please start with some type of non-business related talk. So you're adding benefit to the conversation before you start asking for something, or before you start taking their time up. So what I like to do is encompass something about their robot. Hey, it's exceptional. I really love seeing you guys' growth over the past couple of years. Your swerve you've developed is second to none in FRC, and it's really cool to see your guys' growth over the past couple of years, and it's really impressive. Now what you've done is you've given them a little flattery. They know that you know about their team, and you've connected with them. You can talk about it. Hey, so what was it like developing the swerve drive? What was it that clicked in your head that we want to develop this? Give them an opportunity to respond. Now it's not just you monologuing, it's them having a conversation with you. And they're much more invested in what's happening right there. They're not just like, oh, another scout talking to me about a line selection. No, they're like, this kid wants to talk about my swerve drive, that's awesome, you know? And they're much more excited. Now, once you've made that connection, go ahead, Francis.
I was saying, does that sort of lead back into the quote as a not a salesperson, but the one thing I know about it is the idea that, like, who said it? Carnegie said that the most important words in any language are your own name, or the best sounding words in any language are your own name, right? Being able to talk to a team and get them interested and truthfully let them know how you're interested in what they're doing is a huge mental positive for them.
Absolutely. So, and that's a great point, Francis. With your presentation, honestly, the part that you're actually selling your robot, it might be one of the least important parts of your presentation. Because they already have the scouting data, they probably already know what your robot can do. But if you're going in there and you're making them feel good and you're bringing up their name, they're much more likely to actually take a look at that data. So it's really important that you start with a connection. Now that you made that connection, now that you're comfortable with them, now it's okay to go ahead and figure out who you're actually talking to. So I'm looking to talk a little bit about line selection. I was wondering if I could talk to your lead scout or someone who's a good representative for your lead scout. Oftentimes, that means going to the stands. It's crucial that you go to the stands and find the lead scout. Now, I list optional here. Because on Saturday, if you're making those connections, it's not crucial that you're talking to a lead scout just yet. Make sure you're talking to a drive team member or someone that does have kind of authority on the team, but it's not crucial quite yet because those members are going to be in the scouting meeting and they can bring your name up for you. It's really hard sometimes to find scouting leads. You don't always have time on Sunday. It's time to get real because those scouting leads are probably the only ones that have any effect on the list at that point. Now, people sometimes say, well, Eric, drive team members totally have influence over the pick list. And that's true, but the problem is that on Sunday, once you've made that connection with a drive team member, they have to go out of their way to go talk to the scouting lead and convince them to move you up themselves, which, unless you're the best salesperson in the world, hardly if ever going to happen. So you want to establish that connection directly with the person that's going to be making the listing, going up and talking. So ask where their lead scout is, thank them for their time, go find them in the stands or wherever they are. If once you're in the stands, do the first 3 steps again. Open strong, start with rapport. Hey, I talked with someone in your pit, they said the lead scout is up here, I was looking for him. Is there any opportunity to talk to him? Then they'll point you in the correct direction. Keep doing that until you've actually found the scouting lead. Now you found the scouting lead, you've opened with the same steps, it's time to finally kind of start the presentation. So the first step with any sale is identifying the needs of that team. Now, hopefully, if you've done your research, you already know going in what this team's going to be looking for in a robot of your class. What that means is if you're a low-ranked robot and you're just not scoring very great, you know you're probably going to be a defensive bot going into competition or going into playoff. If they're a high-ranked team, their first 3-4 seeds, they're probably looking for a defense spot. If they're top 4 to 8 seed, they might be looking for triple offense. That is going to depend based on the game and based on the event, but that's kind of a general. So you're going to start off with saying, anyway, I'm here to talk a little bit about line selection. I was just wondering what you guys are looking at coming into a line selection. You guys are primarily defensive bot. Now, what's important here is that you don't just ask them what they're going to do for line selection. That might come off as a little rude, and as a scouting lead, I would be hesitant to just tell somebody what we're planning to do for a line selection. Sometimes they might tell you, but it would be a weird way to start that conversation. What you want to kind of frame it as is, here's an idea I had. Is that what you guys are looking at right now? That gives them be like, oh yeah, kind of. They're probably going to be a little bit unclear. But at least you're giving them an opportunity to respond, you're giving some input, and you can see what their vibe is to your idea. So you guys looking for a defense spot? Oh yeah, we're looking at all of our options. Okay, that's great. Now it's time to move to step 2, the middle of your presentation. It's time to make the pitch. It's time to sell your bot. Now, the next 4 steps, segue to your robot, sell your bot, connect to your bot, and present customized strategy, can be done very quickly and in one great big step. I'm going to give you an idea of what that would look like for someone that's really experienced with doing that. And then I'm going to give you a second idea of when you guys are going to do your first pitch, what it should more like. And that just kind of gives you an easier view. So first off, if I was going up to make a sale to a team, hey, anyway, so we're here to talk a little bit about the line selection coming up. Are you guys looking primarily for a defensive bot going in? Oh yeah, okay, great. We've worked really hard this year on establishing a strong defensive drive base. We built our robot for offense, but we always knew that having that background, being able to to drive defense in the pitch was really important to us. We trained our drivers to drive our great six Neo 8-wheel drive base, tank drive base. And they're really prepared to do it. And I noticed your guys' robot has swerve drive, and I was thinking, well, you guys are bouncing in between the feeder station and the trench. We can be playing a little white line defense, playing a little counter defense. We can bump people off of their shooting course, and if they're going to try and hit you, we can block them out. Now, while you and our first pick are pounding out scoring, we're keeping them from hitting you, and it's gonna work out great. So, you see what I did there? I segued to our robot. I sold our bot. I talked about its performance capabilities and our driver's capabilities. I've connected it to their bot by saying, hey, look, you have this great swerve drive. Look how that complements well with our tank drive. And I've presented a customized strategy to that team. We play white line defense. We play counter defense. You pound out the scoring on the swerve, and guess what? You're going to win every single time because your scoring capabilities outmatches another. Now, what that might look like for you guys on your first try is going to be a little bit slower. Great. Well, I'm here to talk a little bit about alliance selection. I'd really like an opportunity to talk to you a little bit about our robot and its capabilities. We've worked really hard on building a robot that can play defense this year, and we're excited to do that. So I'm coming around talking to teams and telling them a little bit about our defensive capabilities. And I see you guys have a swerve drive over there. And I was thinking, we could establish a nice parallel. You guys are jumping between the trench and the feeder station. We'll play a little white line defense, knock people off their course, while also making sure that we are counter defending anybody that tries to hit you guys. So I essentially said the same thing, but much slower, much more cohesive. When you guys are first going it, just go step by step. Just think, okay, I'm going to segue to our robot. Okay, now I'm telling him about our robot. Okay, now I'm telling about his robot and how it works well with my robot. Now, here's what we can do to win. The thing about presenting a customized strategy is you are, when you're making this pitch, telling a story. And what I mean by that is they're not going to be convinced when you come up and say, hey, let's play, I'm going to play some white line defense. You guys go through the trench. We'll score. We're going to win every time. What they're thinking right then is not, oh, yeah, this kid's got a good strategy. Let's go with that. That's not what's going to happen. What you're doing is you're telling them a vision. Look what can happen if you pick us. We can do this strategy that's going to work, and you're going to win a blue banner because of it. So you're leaving them with a feeling of like, this team can lead us to a blue banner. This team can help carry us to a blue banner. You're not giving them a strategy that they should legitimately consider necessarily, but you're giving them a story. We pound out the counter defense. You go through the trench. No one's ever going to touch you, and guess what? Your scoring capability can definitely outmatch any alliance. That's the story you're telling them. They're like, yeah, I like that idea. I like not being blocked, scoring at our full potential. Now you're leaving them with kind of a strong mental image of how an alliance section can go if they pick you. The next thing we're going to do is a little bit more advanced, but you guys are going to want to present first or second pick options depending on what pick you guys are going to be. Your team is going to be. So what I would highly recommend doing is when you go up to a team ready to present, bring your tablet or bring your scouting data and have it ready to go. Have your team highlighted, have their team highlighted, and maybe a couple of options. Now, what's going to happen is you're going to describe that strategy to them, and then you're going to segue right into here's someone that can work well with us as a first pick or a second pick. So to use a different example, let's pretend like we have, I'll use my own team from 2019, for example. We're a cargo specialist bot. Let's pretend like we're going up to a hash specialist bot. You guys have done so well this year with the their hack specialization, and we have this great cargo manipulator, and we really think if we go line by line up the rocket, we can really make sure that we're pounding up the scoring potential. The problem we're concerned about right now is running out of spots to fill. If you guys have to fill both those hit both those hash panels, we don't want to be sitting there waiting for you to fill it up. So what I was thinking was show them the data, For a third pick option, or second pick option, there's lots of strong hashbots that we think are still going to be left around. 5588 has a really strong hashbot mechanism. What they can do is they can start working on the other rocket, and we can transfer over and start filling up that rocket if we run out of space on the rocket you and I are working on. What they can also do is they have a really strong dry base, as I listed here. They can go over to the other side and play a little defense on the opposing. If you're not interested in 5588, there's a couple other teams listed pretty highly here on their hatch ability. I don't think they're going to get picked by the time this team comes back around to us. And I think that could really work well. Now, it's the same thing as before. You're not telling this scouting lead, who's probably really good at their job, who to pick. You're not telling them what strategy to do. But what you're doing is you're showing that you are clearly coming in having thought about this. And you've put in a lot of effort to make sure that you're specializing in strategy. And they're buying into the image. If you've effectively done these steps, they're thinking about, this looks good. I see this happening. And it doesn't matter what the data says. If you've gone in there and they're convinced that you're the robot for them, and you're the robot for them, they're going to pick you 9 times out of 10. They're going to feel much more. And so that's what it's all about, is telling a story in this version. They probably already have the data on what your drive base can do. But if they're not considering you yet, they haven't thought about you yet, it's really important that you're going in there, you're reconfirming, hey, are you guys aware of how awesome we are, how ready to go we are, and look how much we've thought about it. Now, what you guys might be thinking is, that sounds like a lot of work when I need to talk to 60 plus teams in an event, right? It is sometimes. That's why, as a salesperson, it's a good idea to have a team backing you up. I always liked having at least one other person there to kind of help keep the data organized for me. What would happen was I would kind of give them the pitch. This person with me would show them the data, explain a little bit what we were thinking in terms of different pick options, and then I could go back to it. You should do a little bit of pre-prepare before talking to every single alliance. When you go in, before you go in, make sure you've looked at the scouting data and you said, okay, where are we? We're here. For this robot, we're talking to them about our cargo ability, not our hatch ability. So we want to pull up our cargo ability. Okay, what are a few talking points on that? Great. Now, what are they capable of? Okay, we're looking for a hatch bot if we're talking for a cargo bot. Their hatch ability is here. Okay, great. We've highlighted those two. Now, what's a good complementing bot for that strategy? If we have a hatch bot and a cargo bot, and we're the 6th seed, we probably want to send a defense bot over there, so let's find a good drive base. Okay, here we established 1, here's 2, and if they don't like that idea, let's pick a third. Let's pick one that also does cargo, for example. Here we go. Great. Now we have 3 options. We're ready to go up and present. That's what the pre-talk looks like. Now, this middle portion can be very quick or very long, depending on how much they're reciprocating. Now, I highly recommend when you finish a sentence, try and end the sentence with a question. Doesn't necessarily need to be, it can be rhetorical, but ending with a question keeps the audience engaged, the person you're selling to engaged. So, for example, if I said, we were thinking about playing a little defense coming up during the line section so we can make sure we're protecting you. Well, how does that sound? Now it gives them an opportunity to say, okay, I like that idea. Or even if they don't respond, they're thinking mentally, do I like that idea? That makes sense to me. That's what's going through their head now. And so they're subconsciously now thinking, associating your team with this story and this image of success. Even just ending a sentence with, right? That keeps them engaged. Try and draw out responses from them and make sure that they actually care. I would say 50% of the time, you're going to end up with a lead scout that's going to be very poker-faced, probably not going to give you a whole lot back. In this case, feel free to give your pitch, to thank them for their time, and walk away. 1 to 2 minutes. If you're talking to a scout who's really excited to talk to you and really likes responding, feel free to keep talking as long as they are reciprocating the conversation. I've seen both sides. So there really is a lot of it. Don't take a poker face as I'm not doing a good job. Take a poker face as I've heard 20 of these today, or they've heard 20 of these today, and they're just trying to focus on making sure that they're ready to go for line selection themselves. Doesn't mean you're not making connection with them. It just means that they're not necessarily reciprocating the conversation. So, go ahead.
As I was gonna say, as a scouting person myself, that I am that poker face person you're just talking about. But we do listen, and if you have something to bring to the table, and also if it at all lines up with any of the things we've already thought of, right? If you're a team that is on our pick list and you come to talk to us, that's a huge plus.
Absolutely, yeah. If you are presenting a strategy that they were already had in mind with your robot, then you're on the same page. They're thinking,
right.
All right, this is a perfect team.
Exactly. It tells me that you're thinking the same way that we're thinking, right?
And you're willing to do the strategy.
Yes.
Sometimes teams get worried that they won't want to play defense. No, you're willing to play. You're willing to get in the ball game. So that it's really the small things that add up. You might not be getting through to them with, hey, this 6 neo drive base is strong, but if you've made the connection and the strategy lines up, they're going to be thinking, okay, this team's ready to go. This is who we want to. So now you've introduced yourself, you've established their needs, you've fulfilled their needs with your robot. Remember, we're going back to that. Identify needs, fulfill the needs. It's time to end. So first thing you want to do, and this applies to all sales, is give them a chance to tell you about their concerns and satisfy them, or convince them that that's not. So what might happen is you might present a strategy, and sometimes an alliance captain scouting lead might come back and say, we were thinking triple offense, actually, 2 offense and a defensive bot. You have 2 options when they say that. Option 1, you go ahead and agree with them. Swap your strategy. Go back and reiterate. Okay, if you're thinking triple offense, here's our capabilities on triple offense. Your secondary strategy is say, agree with, don't just say no, you're wrong, but you can stick to your guns a little bit. Say we have this really strong defensive capability, and we're really prepared, and we think this is the right strategy. Now, I wouldn't say either way is the correct way. I have yet to meet a scouting lead that gets offended by me disagreeing with their strategy. I think oftentimes they appreciate hearing your side, and sometimes your robot is just so good at the job you're trying to propose to them, and they don't realize it, that you just need an opportunity to kind of reiterate. So I'll give you an example for both directions. If they disagree, they say no, we weren't thinking triple offense, we were thinking 2 offense and a defense. Here's what you're going, yeah. If you're agreeing with them. Yeah, that's okay. We are prepared to play offense. We do have this strong cargo manipulation, but, defense, I totally get your point. At the 6th seed, we're probably going to be able to want to slow down that offensive capability of the 3rd seed. And we're prepared to do that. We trained our drivers year-round with this great defensive bot to make sure that we're ready to go. We've established a strong drivetrain. We're really prepared to play the game that you need us to play. And you know what? In a pinch, if you guys need us to come back and score some cargo, put them down, we're prepared to do that. Our cargo mechanism is still top tier. But if you want us playing defense, we're ready to do that. That's how you confirm that with them that you're willing to play their strategy, and you still get an opportunity to kind of switch the view and make sure that you're talking about another part of your robot. Now, remember what I was talking about earlier with bolstering the parts of your robot that are impressive. Play your strengths. If they disagree with you, do not swap to a part of your robot that's not impressive. So if you have like a control panel mechanism that you've never used, and they're thinking, they say, we really need a robot that can do the control panel. Do not be like, yeah, we have a control panel mechanism. We never used it, but we have one. That's not going to help you guys get picked. You can mention, we have a control mechanism. It's really not what we're primarily focused on. We haven't had a chance to use it. We're really going to be more efficient with scoring power cells up in the upper area and getting that second clip. So it is difficult sometimes when an alliance captain wants something that you can't provide, but telling them something that's not true, especially if it hasn't been demonstrated in your data, they will recognize that. If you tell them we're great at scoring power cells in the inner port, and they look at their data and you're dead last in power cells, you have a problem now. Tell them the truth. Tell them we have a control wheel mechanism. We haven't used it. We're not confident in its functionality, but it is there. We are really more confident in X, Y, Z. That's how you agree with them to switch it. Now, if you're disagreeing with them, you're confident that a triple offense strategy is the way to win this match. Again, using deep space as an example. I totally see your point, but our concern is with them playing triple offense, likely the sixth seed, we don't think that we'll be able to keep up with that scoring potential, even if we're slowing them down. The problem is that Alliance is probably going to have at least 1 to 2 swerve drive robots, and they'll just jump right around us. So we think if we're able to effectively sit on our side with that, we know a defensive bot isn't coming over here. We can make sure that we're split up evenly, so hatches are going on each rocket, we're pounding out cargo in the cargo ship, and then moving to a rocket. We can stay out of each other's way. We're scoring at max efficiency, and if you're a hatch specialist, we're a cargo specialist, we can outscore them. Show them the data. Look at this. We believe that we have the capabilities to outscore the Alliance if we focus on it. That's how you would respectively disagree. Now, you aren't necessarily looking for them to be like, oh yeah, you're right. That's not going to happen. But if you put in the effort to make sure that you're really doubling down on your robot's capabilities, if they change their mind or they start thinking otherwise, or maybe they don't get the robot they were really looking for the first pick and their strategy changes, now you're maybe at the top of their list. So in a perfect world, there's no concerns. Obviously that's not going to happen often. They're going to have concerns. Make sure you use that opportunity to talk more about your robot and dispel any of those. Now, when you're approaching the end, you want to reconnect with the person you're talking to. Build that rapport again. So don't end it just having talked about your robot the entire time. Reconnect with how they performed over the past couple of years and how impressive. It's been so cool seeing you guys go from rookie just a couple of years ago to really a top performer within the district. And I've been a big fan of yours from the beginning. I love you guys' color scheme. And I'm really excited for what you guys are going to do in the future. And I'm really excited for the prospect to work with you guys through the Alliance selection. Now you're going to hit your bullet points. I think we have a strong defense about that complements your ability to score really well. I think we work really well together. Now you've built a little rapport again. You've ended on a good note. They're feeling confident about you, that you made that connection. Now it's time to close. Now, closing in our presentation about FRC means a little different than in real life. When you're making a sale in real life, at the end, you would do your best to say, all right, let's do this. How many units do you want? Let's make a sale. And if they're not ready to do it right now, you'd email them the next day and follow up with them and incite that buy as quickly as possible. With FRC, it's different. It's not. I would highly recommend not trying to be like, so you guys are gonna pick us, right? No one's gonna go for that. No one's gonna feel comfortable with that. I don't very often see teams talking with other teams and telling them that they're gonna pick that alliance, that team. Excuse me. It actually, in my experience, when I get told by a scouting lead that they are interested in picking us, I feel less confident about that actually happening. Because if they're telling me that usually means that they just don't want to talk to you anymore. Like, they're just like, okay, we'll consider you guys. We're looking really hard at you guys. An alliance that's seriously considering you probably isn't going to go around telling everybody that, hey, we're picking 2412. So you're not going to go for, please pick us. You're going to go for, it was great talking with you. Again, my name's Eric Cline. If you need anything at all, please just come up to our pit. They can find me. Here's my card. Feel free to reach out at any time. I'm available throughout the rest of the day. That's how you effectively close. You give them an opportunity to kind of reconnect with you afterwards. Make sure that if they have any questions, they can get answered. If it gets closer to the end and they're sitting in the seat and they do want to talk to you like, hey, are we still good for this strategy? It's good to be able to be available to talk. But that's how effective SARE works. Now, following up, this is another optional one, which is really only going to come up if you're really struggling and you really need to get picked, or you're doing really well and you want to make sure those top 4 seeds are really considering you. This presentation, this pitch is going to be much shorter. Well, your first one might be 2 to 5 minutes. Your second one might be like 30 seconds to a minute and a half. When you're going in, you want to just make sure your team name and number is still in their head. It might have been a while. If you talk to the first seed as your first pitch of the day, it's been a lot of hours in between then and now for them to forget about you. So go reconnect. If a match is coming up that you're going to play defense and you told them you were going to play defense for them, go up and say, hey guys, we talked earlier about alliance selection. I just wanted to come let you guys know that we're going to be playing defense in the upcoming match 67, and I'd like you guys to check it out if you're looking at our defense capability. That's how you reconnect. Make sure they're showing their head. Make sure they're looking at you guys going into alliance selection. Do this only for the top 4 to 8 seeds. There's no way you have enough time during the day to reconnect with the top 20 or 30. And for most teams that aren't ranked in the top 8, they're going to feel weird about you coming and reconnecting with them at the time. Because you've already established that connection, and when you're coming in and you're saying, hey, you guys should really consider us for your drive-based capabilities, and they're 30th, and they don't even know if they're getting picked themselves, it's a really weird conversation, because that's not what they're concerned about there right now. So you're much better off just talking to the top 8 seeds, reestablish that connection with them, make sure that any questions they have come up get answered. Most of the time they won't have any, but you're just making sure that your name is in their head. And that's basically what the perfect pitch looks like. It was a lot of words. I understand. I highly recommend going back and rewatching this presentation with the posters to kind of recheck all those boxes and practice your own. If you're a team captain or you're a leadership watching this right now, thinking how can I make my better at sales, take those steps and have people practice that. If obviously most of us are confined to our houses right now. Establish some sort of Zoom, Twitch conversation, video conversation. Let people just do a full pitch to another person. Do a little role play. Have one person be the team you're selling to. Have one person be the sell it. What that can do is it can help you develop your skills, help you feel more comfortable with it. The thing about sales, at least in my experience so far, is the nerves never go away. Even before this presentation, I was so nervous. Going up to the last team, very nervous. It's not something that just magically goes away. But as you feel more comfortable with what you're talking about, you know that you're the leading expert about your robot. You know what you're talking about. You are going to feel more comfortable selling that product, selling your robot. And you know this process, it's going to come easily. When I talk to a team, I don't think, okay, I'm gonna build rapport and then I'm gonna segue to our robot. That's not in my head. I'm thinking, okay, all right, Jack in the Box, really strong swerve drive. They do great every single year. And then they go in and just let the conversation flow. It's a back and forth. It's something that should come naturally after a couple of tries. So when you do some role playing, it gives your students an opportunity to practice and lower the stress levels when doing this. The important thing to remember is do not develop a script. Okay, what that means is do not say the same thing for every single team. Even for this presentation, I had maybe 5 bullet points for the entire presentation. It was not this is something where you should know the content so well that you should be able to just talk about it and have a conversation. So when going in, it's obvious if you're scripted. Please just go and be casual. Tell them the truth. I love your guys' team. I love the way you built your hackbook in this year. Can you tell me about your flywheel? Ask them a legitimate question. Make a connection. It's much more authentic. You're going to feel much more comfortable once you've started that conversation. And then you can jump in to talking about your robot. And while the points you want to hit are pre-identified in your head, you're not just reading a laptop or reading out of your head. Established. Just have a conversation with them. So, to recap, what are the key points that we hit today? First, one of the things I cannot stress more, you are always a representative of your team. You always, every single action you commit is always going to reflect upon your team and any other organization you're a part of. Okay? Especially now more than ever in the digital world, everything you do is recorded in history forever. So you want to make sure that you're putting out the best version of yourself and the best version of your team possible. I see sometimes people will have private message chats with just a couple of people, and they will, they'll think, it's okay, I can talk a little bit of trash about my team because it's just these couple of people and I trust them. Right, but it's not fair to the rest of your team if you do that, because your talk, you say, oh, our Cline team sucked this year or something like that. Now all those kids that you're talking with are going to have bad perceptions about the rest of their friends that are on that Cline team. Please, 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 always be the best representative possible. Act like you're talking to a judge. Maintain gracious professionalism. And the view of your team, yourself, and robotics as a sport in general will go up much quicker. We want to get the best version of ourselves out there. Secondly, play to your strengths. That goes through all of life. That goes through every single type of judging and sales. You want to talk about the parts of your product, your robot, that are the most impressive, the parts that really shine through. But everybody has failures. If you're not failing, you're not succeeding. I've always told people, failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is complementary to success because it comes along together. You're going to fail, you're going to improve, then you're going to succeed. You should always be improving. You should always be playing to your strengths. When you talk to a judge, when you talk to a team, talk about the most impressive parts of your team. Connect with the team, judge, or whoever you're talking to, you're trying to get something out of. Do not just expect to go in and immediately break into a sale. With judging, it's a little different. They're sometimes in a hurry. They sometimes, they don't, it's not on your schedule. They usually have a list of questions. But even just taking the time to say, it's great to talk to you today. I'm really excited to have this conversation. Makes them feel a whole lot more comfortable talking to your team. And it's really going to improve the chances of that judge liking you and, coming back and having, keeping your team number in their head. Same thing goes with other teams. Same thing goes with the companions around you. When you text a friend and you need something from them, just don't be like, "Hey, I need a favor." Aiden, it's great talking to you. How has your summer been so far? Have a conversation with them and then segue into it. Finally, sell. Just like apply. You should always be looking for an opportunity to put out your team in a positive light. Okay? Every opportunity someone says, "Hey, Eric, how's your build season going?" Say, "It's great. It's so exciting to see what our team is putting together this year. It's so impressive how much the kids are learning. I'm really excited what's happening." At competition, when you're thinking about talking to teams, don't get discouraged that your team is doing poorly. You still have the capability to bring it back and bring your team to the next level. At DCMP last year, PNW DCMP, I thought so desperately that we were done. Our season was over. We were practically last place. There was nothing we could do, and that mindset's not going to help you going in. The odds of you getting picked are practically zero if you don't put in the effort to try and get picked. Go around and start talking. It's going to increase your odds. Talk to every single team. Sometimes you might not think it's necessary. You think, I've talked to half the teams. I've talked to other line scouts. It's fine. We'll cross our fingers. Don't leave it to chance. Talk to every single team. There's no harm in talking to every single team. There's no harm in talking to the top 16 teams twice. It establishes a connection. Even if you don't end up getting picked, at least that team is walking away with a better perception of you and your team. And that's what matters, is that year after year, people like your team. People like interacting with you. And that's the most important part that you're having time and connecting with those around you. And that's a big part of what Gracious Professor is about. So those are the four most important parts. Now, my presentation is over. I understand we're moving to the Q&A portion. I'm happy to answer any questions. If you guys want to follow up with me after this presentation, my Chief Delphi is listed down below. That's what you're most comfortable with. I'm very active on there. You can also feel free to and my Discord first slide is back to that. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions after this Q&A, something comes up later, or if you want to talk more about your team and its goals.
Well, there you go. See, you're taking your own advice there, making connection with somebody right at the end. Right. Excellent. Hey, Eric, that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed listening to your presentation. It gave me a really cool perspective, having been the recipient of a lot of pitches, some of them good, many of them working on getting better, we'll say.
Right.
It's great to hear someone who put a lot of thought into that. That's really great. So again, we have a lot of questions that have already come in. We got a few more that are coming in now. If you've still got a question, we've got time. Just type it into the Twitch chat with !Q followed by your question, and then we'll answer your question here live on the air. So we're going to start off with our first one here today. This one is coming from, let me put it up on screen. Yes, this one's coming from Crispy Kiwi, and they're asking, when it comes to regular members up in the stands, should they try to talk to other teams in the stands, like say hello, introduce themselves? Is that important?
Absolutely, and that goes for any position you're in. You're at a robotics competition. So many people would kill to be in your position. I mean, I envy the students that still get to the program because, having connections with doesn't come up every day. So if you're in the stands, if you're scouting, if you're a little bored, talk to the team next to you. Make a connection. Go sit with them and scout with them. That was one of my favorite parts, was going around and just seeing what was going on. It doesn't have to be an official manner. If you are at an event and you're not assigned to go learn about business, you want to see what other teams are doing with their business team, go talk to them. Take some notes. That's really great to not only have a better time yourself, but make some friends, make some networking opportunities, and build a connection for your team. The visualization of your team.
Okay, so we've got another question here. This is from a user that their username is, I'm pretty sure, unpronounceable, but I'm going to go with Wyoming Grangia. Okay, they're asking, what can mentors and parents do to help with selling the team, or what should they be careful of doing at competitions?
At competitions, it's important as a mentor or parent to that it's job to do sales. You don't ever try and accompany them on their. But what can help, what a lot of students need, especially if you have a team that is their first time making sales pitches, give them the confidence they need. Make sure they feel comfortable with what they're doing. Again, even in my last day at a competition in dribbling last year, I remember my mentor. I was talking to him. I was telling him I really want to go talk to 48, but I'm so nervous. And he's like, Eric, go do it. So he walked me over to the, walked away, and I was kind of forced to go. That's something you can do. If they're really nervous, give them the the extra push that they need to go start talking to teams. Once you've made the first couple pitches, it becomes a lot easier. For a parent or a mentor before competition, give the students the opportunity to practice. I'm guessing you have a lot more experience with, you're an adult, you carry experience through life. Let them pitch to you. Are you convinced? Did they convince you something? What can they improve with their speech pattern? Everybody can always improve their speech pattern. Even I was trying to do my best of not saying during the presentation. Tell them parts like that, because it's not something you always know as a kid. Just simple notes like that when they're presenting can really help improve their confidence going.
Yeah, and as a side note, for parents that might be part of a group, I sort of say parents are separate from mentors, because you can be a parent and a mentor, but if you're just a parent and not a mentor on the team, you're still a representative of the team, and it's very important that everybody's got to show grace and professionalism, and just like you were saying earlier, keep everybody thinking positively about your team. Now, that doesn't mean that parents have to go out and feed all the students on all the other teams, but they do need to make sure that, it's very easy for anybody to just be like, oh, wow, those guys kind of suck, right? But, you probably shouldn't do that no matter what, especially if you're wearing a shirt with your team number on it.
Absolutely. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Glad you brought that up. Parents' actions at a competition are just as important as the students' actions at a competition, especially because the parents are often the ones that take up the stand. Their enthusiasm about the event is going to make a big difference to teams looking at them and your own team. If the parents are gloomy, there's no way the students are having a situation.
Yeah.
And don't make your kid feel worse about or your team feel worse about what's happening. All too often, I see parents lose sight of what the program is about. It's about educational opportunities. It's about self-improvement. I see them focus too much on the actual outcome. And when the parents focus on winning or losing, the students are going to start focusing on winning or losing. If the parents start using excuses, we talked yesterday at 2:00 the positive speech. We had some great points. As a parent, don't blame the match schedule, because then your students are going to start blaming the match schedule, and that's not effective for teams.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Great. All right, we have another question here. This is from RSISC 101. They are asking, you've given us a bunch of great ways to sell your team verbally. Is there any value in providing something printed or physical to other teams or to the judges?
That's a great point. for as far as judging is going, I would make sure you have those, what we call the strength that you have, demonstratable in person. So I talked a little bit about it. Have your business plan ready, page through it. My team puts together what we call an awards booklet. Our chairman's, our business plan, all of our outreach from the prior, and our safety booklet, all right there in the pit, ready to go. So they hang on to that. If the judge comes up, you're capable of scrolling through, and if you're talking about the outreach events together this you got pictures right there. You have little descriptions. You can show them all the happy, smiling faces. Great way to do it. If you're talking about a mechanical part of the robot, if you have spare parts from that the season, have that ready to go. Bring it out. Say, look at this. Look at the design iteration that we went through. Look at why we did this. As we're talking to teams, one great strategy I see a lot is they develop brochures with the robot's capabilities. That's totally a great way to do it. That not only builds community outreach, so parents and family members can see what each team is doing, but you can bring around the team and leave them with that. Now, from a lead scout position and someone who's done sales for a while, I've never found a whole lot of specific benefit in my experience with holding on to one of those cards. It often just gets put in the side of the pit. But if it helps you kind of have a visual aid to point at the different attributes of your team, and you have a picture right there, and you can hand it to them, that helps you comfortable. That's totally great. The last thing on physical notes I would say is make sure you have your scouting data ready to go to present to other teams. That's how you make sure that your points you're saying are substantiated.
Cool. All right, great insight. And I think you hit a very important point, is that as the recipient of a lot of those forms, they have to be accompanied with pitch you've been describing this whole time. Because just handing somebody a form is basically walking up to somebody and saying, hey, can you throw this away for me?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, lots more questions coming in. We got another one here. This one is from Nuttyman54. They're asking any suggestions for how to sell to a team that you had a negative interaction with earlier in the event or season. Repairing bridges, basically.
Yeah, repairing your reputation.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody who's been in FRC for more than a year can think of a couple teams that when their name comes across your head, you just think, oh man, that team. It happens. It happens to the best teams. It happens to the worst teams. Your reputation is so easy to destroy, even if the team as a whole is like that. That sometimes happens, and so being able to repair that is a constantly improving job. I've seen some teams who, when I started FRC, I had very poor perceptions about, and by the end, I had really great perceptions about. Some of the tools you can use is making sure that you're connecting with them. It's a little hard when you don't have a specific instance. If there was if you you destroy, you were playing defense on them and you ripped off their, that might be something you go and talk to them immediately after the match. To give an example, at Glacier Peak last year, 2019, my team, we had the great honor to play against Cyber Knights and oh man, I'm forgetting their alliance partner. Anyway, in the quarterfinals, and there was a tough call made on behalf of the refs that ended up ending the match in our favor. And the first thing I did as soon as the match was over was walk up to their pit and talk to them with it and talk to them about it and apologize. It was an unfortunate situation. That's not the way you want matches end, and that's not good for anybody. So that's how you start to immediately apologize. If it's something smaller, if it's just some slight comments, and you're noticing a problem with your team, just reestablish with your team why it's important to put out good perceptions. It's really quite simple to just go around and talk to teams about their team and what they've done. People love talking about themselves, and so if you give them an opportunity to say, "Hey, you're the business lead. Tell me about how you built your business team this year," they're gonna feel so great, being like, "Look at all the awesome things I did." Even if you're not necessarily walking with something you want to implement in your own team, it gives you that connection, and it starts repairing any poor relationships you already had.
Yeah, and one of the things you touched on that I think is really important is it's really easy to begin to have a problem with a team, because a team is a faceless entity, right? If you can have a negative interaction or a negative opinion of a team very easily, but to have a negative impression of a person, you have to actually have a negative impression with that person, right? And so just reminding everybody that these teams are made up of human beings, and being human beings with them and being the people that Woody, always told us we should be is a huge step in making that, fixing any bridge, no matter what, that in general in life, truthfully. Right?
Absolutely. If you're a leader on a team and your team struggles with putting out good perceptions, even just yourself being the representative you want to be, yourself out there can help improve your team's image.
Yeah.
If you go out and connect with people in your community, people are going to think of, who's the person I know from 2412? Eric Cline. He's a cool guy. Their team is also cool. That's basically how that works. It's just kind of human perception.
Yeah. All right. So a few more questions. Again, we're rounding the bend toward the end of the presentation, the next 10, 15 minutes. So make sure to send in your questions if you've got them, so we don't end up missing out on it. But coming up next, we have a question from Captain D 5746. They're asking, should your sales team be separate from your scouting team, or is it better for your lead scout to do the sales?
That's a great question. It's gonna come a little bit down to what you keep. So as lead scout, I also one that went around in sales. My senior year when I was team captain, we had a screen right now. Scout. So I would recommend that your salesperson is very heavily involved with the process. They know how it works. They've hopefully scouted a lot of matches. Maybe they spent a year as the scout. But at the same time, it's really important that your scouts have a good leader in the stands to help make sure that. So if you have the capability to have a lead scout and a couple of leaders within that scouting group that can cover you, absolutely. If you're lead scout, go down. You're the most qualified to talk about it. Go ahead. If as a lead scout you want to establish a team of 3 to 5 people or 1 to 5 people that are in charge of selling yourself, break them up into squads of 2. Say go ahead, go talk to teams, report back here. Lots of options depending on the size of the team. It's really up to who feels most comfortable. I can tell you from my experience, being a good salesperson is a trait that is really hard to develop, and I was lucky to get effort with a lot of skills already. And all 4 of my years, I really wanted to be a driver, but I never signed up because I knew that my skills were better suited for being a good salesperson. And so sometimes it does take a little bit of give and take. You cannot be a driver and be a salesperson. You could be a lead scout and be a salesperson. You need some position.
Okay, cool. A couple more questions coming in here. This question is, any tips or tricks for small teams, especially during events where there can't be necessarily dedicated students to sales?
Absolutely. So, when I started on 2412, we were a team of 10 people. On a good day, maybe there. It was hard to effectively run. Our scouting process consisted of one of our seniors sitting in the stands with a OneNote open, typing out visual notes on each team. That did not mean sales went away. If anything, crucial. You need, even if it means a little bit of degradation of the process, I highly recommend at least action with the top 20 teams, at least one. If once you get the process down, you can probably talk to 20 in an hour. And so it doesn't take a long time to make sure your relationship. Now, I understand it's really hard to decide what job is it. Sometimes effectively having someone in whoever is in charge of being a pit, if it's just your drive team, making sure they're capable of talking to teams that come around is going to be really crucial to making that connection, because they're already there anyway. Otherwise, they're able to talk to scouts.
Okay, cool. So we got a question here. This is also from Crispy Kiwi again, who I think is going for the record for a number of questions this conference. So you're in the lead right now. Keep it up. When it comes to making sure everyone on the team can talk to judges or just having one person, what are the pros and cons when it comes to these two different approaches? Earlier in the presentation, you sort of talked about how some teams want everybody to be a salesperson like that, and some teams have a sort of focused sales team. What do you see as the pro and con in that realm?
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing about talking with judges especially, you don't want to just have one singular person that's capable of talking. It causes if that person needs to go get some food or wants to go watch a match and the judge shows up when they're the only one trained to talk to the problem. I see sometimes teams say, "Oh, it's okay. We'll call our guy and tell him to come get down here." That's not going to work. Judges are only there for a handful.
Yeah.
They're not willing to wait, and it's going to look weird if you're calling. So what I would highly recommend is do have the best way I like to do it is have someone who is in charge of the sales portion of your team. They can have another role position, be a around lead position, but having someone that you know is your point person for making these decisions and making calls that works with the scouting lead is important. Then what you do is establish a list of 6 to 8 people who are your most qualified to talk about the robot. So your head of sales should be able to talk, but you want to bring in someone who works very heavily with the mechanical portions of the robot. If you identify your intake as the most robot, have your intake lead there. Have them prepared to talk about some designs they work. Make sure you have a freshman there. I highly recommend if you have a freshman that is really inclined to help out. Rotate a couple freshmen through your pit. Sometimes we'll have a list of 3 or 4 freshmen who they go from scouting, they come through the pit for 30 minutes or an hour, and then they go back and they help out the pit. They get a little bit of experience to see what is pit life like, and they're there to talk to judges. The judges love hearing from perspective. You can also train your whole team. I do highly recommend that making sure that your whole team knows what your key parts of your team are is important. That's because just because you're not sitting in the pit doesn't mean you're not going to have to sell to somebody. If somebody comes up to you in the stands, maybe the scouting lead's not there, and they really need to talk to someone about a line selection, you need to be prepared to talk about your robot. Even in just casual conversations, like we said earlier, making connections with other people in the stands, you should have enough knowledge to talk about what your team does. And so it is great to make sure your whole team gets an education, but I personally focusing in on a couple of people who you're going to make sure are by the pit prepared to talk about the team's entirety.
Okay, great advice. We're coming toward the end of our questions here, so this is going to be like our last call for people in the chat. If you want to send in a question, make sure you do that shortly before we end for the morning here afternoon. Next question here coming in. They're asking, any tips on how to sell an alliance on a match strategy if they're hesitant to agree? This is something I've seen a lot where you and your alliance partners get together, but maybe the alliance has a different thought in mind, or maybe they think that maybe they have a goal that isn't necessarily aligned with yours.
Yeah, that's a great question. That happens all the time. It's going to depend a little bit on if you're captain first. Personally, the way I see it, if you're a second seed, you usually have a responsibility the alliance to play the game that they want to play. That doesn't mean being a yes man. You should bring into your data. You should prove your point. But if they're committed to, we picked you for this strategy, we want to play this strategy, you should be willing to at least try it out once. If it doesn't go well, you can reevaluate after the first match and re-talk about it. If you're really convinced that your strategy is the way to present data about your robot and the rest of your alliance robots, and explain why. Data-backed strategy is the best way to convince other people who are like-minded in terms of they like data as well, and so you're going to have the best luck in convincing them that your strategy is correct. As a first pick, you have much more weight going into that conversation. The captain of the first pick can be often very similar robots, or very similar in ability. That happens all the time, and so it's going to be essentially the same thing. You're showing them data to prove that your strategy is more effective. Excuse me. If you're up there and it's just you and your captain, you haven't picked your second seed, make sure you start establishing what is our strategy going before you pick your third robot or your third robot. You should talk with them first. Establish, hey, great to meet you. Shake their hand and then say, okay, here's what the captain should say. Here's what we were thinking. The first you should tell them what they were thinking. Come to a conclusion. Then find a robot that fits that. As a captain, you are the captain. You do kind of have final say in terms of that, but you should be getting buy-in from your alliance. They should be excited about the strategy you guys are. Again, that means making sure that your first seed is okay with the strategy that you pursue before picking a third robot. That's going to help a lot solve any problems. Now, as a captain, do not be afraid to try out new strategies. Science really wants to try it. Again, at Glacier Peak last year, we picked 2928 Viking Robotics as our primary hatchbot. And our scouting lead told me the story. I think it was hilarious. We were they're a hatchbot, and they came up and our lead scout told them, okay, we're thinking we pick up a defensive bot on the end, and they told us, no, we want to play defense. And we were shocked. We were like, did we just blow our first pick on a defensive bot? And Viking ended up being one of the best defensive bots in the entire district. We would have never known if we wouldn't have a chance. They played the entire event. Our second pick ended up being a hatch only, and it worked out really well. So don't be afraid to, they know their robot better than you do. They knew that, hey, our drivers have been driving defense all year. We're ready to go. Let us give it a shot.
Right.
And it worked out.
All right. Well, Eric, thank you so much for spending your time with us. Thank you so much for working on this presentation and bringing it to us and everybody here watching. It was a lot of fun, and I know I learned a lot about the process behind this, and hopefully it's something that I can use on my team for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Francis. It was super great to talk with you today.
Awesome. So coming up next at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, we've got Professor Ken Stafford. He's going to be doing a presentation about motors and transmissions, the science behind it, and how to select motors and gear ratios based on all that fun stuff. So with all that said, we'll see everybody soon. Eric, one last big thank you from everybody here for being on the show, and we look forward to seeing everybody shortly. So thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Venice a way to monitor their canals, and Venice's canals are like their roads. It's how they get around, it's how they transport things. IQPs will do that. They give these cities and these countries ways to improve how they're doing things.
The best thing about being a WPI student is that you're finally with a community of people that have the same passion and values that you do.
They may not realize it, but they're changing the world as their college students. They don't have to wait until they're out of college.
And then eventually, who knows, I will change the world.
We're no longer students, we're thinkers, we're researchers, and we're innovators pushing the world to become something different and something better.
We innovate everything.
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 I think the advanced pace here at WPI really lends itself to being able to learn those valuable time management skills that you would need in the workforce.
Taking 3 courses at a time really allows yourself to go in depth into your studies.
You have fewer amount of classes to juggle at once, so it really allows you to focus on the 3 to 4 classes that you have and really put the work and effort in to learn that material.
It makes it a lot easier to plan your schedule. You can do a lot of other things during the week, have good sleep, go to the gym, do sports and activities, and have time for everything that the WPI campus has to offer.
WPI has a great range of classes, and it's very easy to pick the classes you want and try out classes in the first 2 weeks and then choose what you want. I tried out a new class and I found out my interest in data science more.
I think the grade system, the A, B, C, and no record, or NR, really helps contribute to group learning. It really helps students try to strive for classes that might be harder because they don't have that fear of having a failing grade on their record.
A lot of employers are really interested in engineers, scientists, you name it, who are able to communicate their ideas, because there's a lot of us who can do the work, but not all of us can talk to people who don't know how to do the job, how we did the job. They want to know, are you able not only to work on a team, but are you able to think about the human aspect of what you're doing? We're really starting to be looked at closely by the public on how we're thinking about the implications of our work. We can't just make cool things anymore. We have to think about how those cool things affect the world. And the humanities and arts provide a background and perspective that's amazingly valuable.
The problem of education right now is that many times education is taken as a one-size-fits-all paradigm where everybody has to fit into the structure. My research involves the creation of innovative learning technologies for students to learn mathematics. I'm trying to leverage on the power of learning technologies and what is known about how to teach students, but at the same time merge in something very engaging that students are naturally drawn to. Those are games. The Wearable Learning Cloud Platform is a system we created that manages all, and it also saves the data from students that have played games. Students interact with the environment. They scan objects in the environment. They measure objects with their hands or with their full bodies. And they scan using QR codes or NFC scans. And that way they get immediate feedback from the cell phone about whether that was the thing that they were looking for or not. Games are a powerful tool for learning because children naturally play games. I'm interested in helping and supporting all students to learn mathematics, but I'm particularly interested in helping girls and minorities, and those that have been traditionally disadvantaged by the traditional school system. We're trying to enhance the mathematics classroom so that we can open up the pipeline into STEM careers. What we know is that students learn with the games and that they enjoy them quite a bit, much more than traditional forms of learning. I am hoping that this system can change the education system quite a bit, because right now I feel that classrooms are somewhat detached from the realities of children outside of school, and children outside of school play games at Twitch speed. They are moving and interact with a variety of technology that is very exciting and fascinating, and I want to make this distance between school and home much more seamless. I have the certainty that at some point these ideas and these games are going to become much more widely adopted to try to help and support.
And the 9 words to live by are: go to class, do the work, and ask for help. It's your job to get there and get to class. You'll benefit by doing that. It's important to do the work assigned to you. And if you're having difficulty with the work, those last words are really important. And one of the things I say to students here is those last 3 words, ask for help, I think are actually the most difficult for some of our students. And the reason is, our students are very bright. They've been at the top of their class. So it is important to ask for help if it's not from faculty that you're asking for help from, other students. The Insight program supports students throughout A and B term in particular to make that adjustment and make that transition from high school to the university smooth. Every student has a 3-person support team. RA, the resident assistant, the CA, the community advisor, and the IA, the Insight advisor, which is a faculty member or administrator who is an academic advisor.
Across 6 continents. At WPI, our Global Projects program is unique. Whether you choose to work across the city or across the ocean, it's the experience that takes you further. You'll work to make a profound impact to communities and organizations and come back a different person than you were before.
Meanwhile, as a sophomore, undergraduates identify their strengths, values, passions, and professional aspirations, allowing students to pursue a more intentional path at WPI to realize their goals. To reduce the burden on families shouldering the cost of higher education and enable students to accomplish more in a condensed timeframe, WPI offers a 4- and 5-year path to combine bachelor's and master's degrees, allowing students to accelerate through a dual degree program at lower cost and graduate with a competitive edge. Additionally, WPI offers a co-op program where students can earn valuable professional experiences and explore career options. It's through these initiatives we believe students will be able to afford their education, have life-shaping experiences, and embark on successful careers.
We wanted to be a premier, scientifically oriented engineering college. Right away I could see that working on real problems had a tremendous motivational capability. It was a very intense and detailed study to see what we should do, and came up with what was called a plan.
Can we be just as bold and just as audacious if we ask ourselves today what the world needs from higher education, what the world needs from STEM professionals, what the world needs from WPI? Today, the world needs us to focus on impact and outcomes now more than ever.
So I graduated with a degree in aerospace engineering, but on any given day, I would tell you that my degree was in problem solving.
WPI just doesn't help students have impact. We require that students have impact. And I believe deep in my soul that we do this every day with every one of our students.
Dealing with a lot of group projects, you have to work with different personalities. I had a lot of conflict, and just resolving it was what made me a better person.
I want to make sure that the world is accepting of everyone, and especially with WPI's influence, I've been able to do small things to make sure that everyone feels accepted for all of their differences.
It helps to be surrounded by great minds who are just as enthusiastic as you. And there is no wall, there is no door. I work right next to biochemical engineering. We work with biomedical engineers. We have a couple physics students. We have my department, which is biology. And sitting right back to back next to each other has really fostered this great collaborative research.
What really gets a WPI student or faculty member excited is impact. My interest is
TI students that, they typically do very well here. And I don't think we're the only company that sees that.
Anywhere I go, I will be ready for whatever comes. That's how WPI has really given me that confidence, and I love that.
The challenges that humanity faces are urgent, complex, and demanding of our best work. The intensive, empowering way that WPI educates students, the problem-focused research that we do here matters. It matters now more than ever.
What used to be kind of like a purely mechanical area, like automotive and this vehicle technology, is very quickly becoming an electrical and computer engineering domain. The automotive industry is 100% moving towards autonomy. It's the next evolutionary step, but we're hitting sort of a small plateau in terms of all the sort of the sensor technologies that folks have been using. LiDAR, radar, all these technologies only see what's in front of them, what's behind them, what's on the side, until the next vehicle or the next tree. But that's it. So the situational awareness is only within, maybe tens of feet. We're at a point where if we don't have connectivity between vehicles, we'll never reach true autonomy, period. Wireless is the game changer. So with vehicle connectivity, it's like that super sixth sense. The car's not only going to see the car ahead of it, it's going to see every car stacked behind that car. My research is using a technology called cognitive radio, which effectively means that in this radio, which is highly programmable, there's something like an artificial intelligence in it that will be able to learn and try out new things in order to establish connectivity in the best possible way given the circumstances. So my research really focuses on how to use that AI in order to make a cognitive radio for one car to connect with all the other cars around it in a very highly dynamic environment. So what we're seeing here is the ability for that vehicle to take camera imagery from its dashboard, then send it by cognitive radio to this vehicle here, and then put it onto this laptop and render that image. Let's say that image is showing a deer, it's showing another vehicle, it's showing a car accident, it's showing road conditions. That information can be very useful for a car that might be behind it in order for it to know what's ahead of it and make the right decisions for things like self-driving cars. This research can support connectivity of everything, especially this concept called the vehicular Internet of Things, or smart roads. This will be an entire connected ecosystem of both roadside units, of vehicles on the road, all of them sort of interface with each other in order to provide humans with the best possible experience on the road, protect them, keep them safe, and get them from point A to B. I promise you, with this, no traffic jams in 5 years from now. It's going to make all our lives a lot better. It's going to make us safer on the roads, and it's just a great feeling to know that I'm making a difference for society.
Something that's different about WPI students is they really love the challenges that they're presented with. I work with a couple other WPI alumni in my projects, and every single time that we have a problem we need to solve or some kind of challenge we're facing, it's always a brainstorming session to find those solutions and different ways of tackling these challenges. And they really do a good job of making sure that the progress is being made no matter what the obstacles we face are.
The car charging project is an attempt to address what we believe will be an upcoming problem for autonomous vehicles. I think that we'll see autonomous vehicles as a service, kind of like Lyft or Uber, and those vehicles need to be recharged. What we want to achieve is that next level of autonomy. If we have an autonomous vehicle that still needs a person to recharge it, then we haven't quite reached the pinnacle. So we were looking at a robotic solution. The autonomous vehicle would pull into a charging spot that is manned by a robot. In your standard kind of car, you would have a gas flap. Electric vehicles will have some type of a charging port. The robot vision system located that gas flap and then opened it, then did a tool change from the pneumatic suction cup that was used to open the flap to the appropriate kind of electric plug. The robot arm would come back over again, realign on the charge port, and then insert the male part into the female part to start the charging process.
This project is important for the future of autonomous vehicles because in order to have a fleet of autonomous vehicles completely independent from human operation, they'll need to be able to recharge themselves between runs. In the current day, it might not make a lot of sense economically, but looking forward, we think solutions like this will be necessary to be able to maintain autonomous fleets.
So, Wole Sobiejo, our new provost at WPI, so excited to talk with you about our academic enterprise. You're our chief academic officer, and there's so much happening in academics at WPI right now. One of the things I'm really excited about this year is getting going on the global school. What are your thoughts about that?
So I'm excited because I think the global school is the next revolution for us for the next 50 years. I think we're going to build on our culture of project-based education, this blend of research and education that can inform policy and can have a major impact on our project-based activities all across the world.
Kind of taking WPI's famous Global Projects program and taking it to the next level.
Yes, I think we're building on our special sauce, the way we approach projects, the way we solve problems, but we're integrating with all our partners across the world to have major impact.
Yeah, it's awesome, and we're in the process of hiring our first dean of that school, so it's going to be an exciting year there. The other really interesting thing happening, I mean, the global school is all about crossing disciplinary boundaries, but you're thinking about that on a much larger scale. Tell us about some of the cross-cutting themes you've been focused on.
So as you say, Laurie, the most exciting areas in science and technology today are at the interfaces between fields.
That's right.
And in these areas, we can have groundbreaking discoveries that drive the technologies of tomorrow, that change the lives of people across multiple generations. And so within the framework of our own history, we have 4 thrust areas that we're pushing.
Yeah.
So one is really looking at materials and manufacturing, which goes back to our early origins, but also now connects with machine learning, AI, additive manufacturing, to really create the manufacturing of tomorrow.
Right.
And we have groups here at WPI doing world-leading research, working with industry and groups of companies across the world to really drive the future of materials and manufacturing. We're also starting, as you know, the Sagamore Road Industrial Complex as part of a northeastern hub for materials and manufacturing. And then in the biospace space. We have lots of innovations with the BioX cross-cutting initiative, with the new advances in neuroscience, new advances in biomanufacturing, and many new areas that connect the frontiers of biology and engineering to the future mix. And it's this eclectic mix of robotics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, sensors, the Internet of Things, autonomous vehicles, that really represent this new era of the smart world. And
Fourth industrial revolution.
the fourth
personified here
yes.
at WPI.
And it represents how we could bring collectively all those areas to drive really the future of technology in ways that impact the world. And with the advent of the new building, with the groups of folks here at WPI, I think it will represent the next stage in collaborative learning, as well as discovery and innovation that will really have a major impact in the world. And so those are three areas.
Yeah.
When you integrate them into global initiatives, then you have this framework that also supports the global school in a way that's truly unique.
And all of these provide really cutting-edge educational opportunities for our students. And of course, they're at the center of everything we do. So how are these new initiatives really going to drive the future of WPI education?
So for education, what we're wanting to do is to bring together cutting-edge approaches in project-based education at both the undergraduate and the graduate level, connect them to our strengths in STEM education, and really then bring both the hands-on and the theoretical components together in a way that will continue to make WPI students leaders of tomorrow.
And continuing to think about new degree programs, new offerings. We have a new bachelor's degree in data science where we're constantly innovating around our current academic offerings. And that to me is so exciting, the connection of that groundbreaking research all the way to the classroom with our students. So thank you for your work in our academic enterprise. I'm very excited to see what comes next.
Thank you, Laurie.
Thanks.
At the basic level, we really want to capture the fundamental drivers of fire spread. And as wind is one of the main drivers of wildland fire spread, that's why we're using the wind tunnel. We know the effect of wind, that when wind blowing, the fire will spread faster, but it's very difficult to quantify. In the field, the wind is very erratic. So the wind will go in every direction, you'll have gusts and everything, and so it's very difficult to analyze. So the merit of that is that we can burn real vegetation in the field, but with a controlled wind, because with the wind tunnel, we'll control the wind, we'll give it one direction and one velocity. We really want to understand and to quantify the intensities that firefighters will face so we can protect them better from these heat and these particles coming.
My research is on unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs. These are basically any object that flies and does not have a pilot. The way things operate right now, the human operator does a lot of work on his or her own to be able to just tell the UAV what to do. And as you can imagine, this is inefficient because the pilot needs to be in constant communication, and you can only have one pilot do one thing at a time. The primary things I'm trying to do is to try and make UAVs fly by themselves, fly autonomously, and at the same time try and accomplish complex tasks rather than just go from A to B. It can achieve things like survey this area, look for something interesting, like maybe a person who's in need of help, and if you do find that, go report it somewhere else where you can actually get that help from. Most of the testing that we do is actually through simulations. We have obviously managed to demonstrate a lot more capability in the simulations, but to translate these simulations to a real-world test takes a lot of effort and time. So we have been able to test to an extent in the real world, but not all to deliver emergency supplies or medical supplies. The outcomes of this research that I'm doing can lead to coordinated actions between unmanned aerial vehicles and unmanned trucks on the ground, such that resources are focused wherever they are needed and people who are in most need get help first.
Existing prosthetics place sensors in the socket of the prosthesis, and they use those to control, say, the hand or the wrist. But some of the newer generation of prosthetics can be socketless, so they no longer have a place to put these electrodes and these sensors. And so we're developing these sensors in a wireless form so they can be placed directly on the arm and communicate wirelessly to the prosthesis.
Two of the most important aspects of prosthetic technology for upper limb wearers would involve the comfort and fit of the socket as well as the comfort and fit of the harness. And those are two very important reasons that people abandon use of a prosthesis. And this is where the wireless control system can make a huge difference, because those sensors can be placed anywhere, and it's regardless of what a socket or socket-less system can appear to offer. So it offers greater opportunity to those potential users and out
of the academic lab and actually into prosthetic devices.